Well, thank you for having me here. I would like to believe that I've not been invited here just because I happen to be a successful lawyer, uh, because I've authored many books, many best selling books. I run a literature festival, as I heard when I was introduced, or that I have many creative initiatives, but that what bothers or makes you inquisitive is that how am I able to do so many things together? We have only 24 hours in a day, we have only one life. And how is it that I am able to live so many lives within one life? In a way, therefore, I believe that I have been invited to speak about the trajectory of my life. And I believe that I'm not any extraordinary. I am like all of you in this room. We all have in us what I have been able to accomplish in my life. So there's nothing rocket science about what I do. It is just that I have done two or three things in my life which has allowed me to reach where I am today, and which all of you are capable of reaching. First, that most times we don't allow ourselves to explore us enough. We are too fixated on one thing that we have decided in our mind that we should be doing, which we are capable of doing, which is what we want to do in life, and this is what we are made to do in life. We're too fixated on our goal, and therefore we walk a straight path, not just looking around us enough to be able to allow ourselves to explore our true potential, true capabilities. The second reason is that when we do achieve something in life, a little bit of success, a little bit of profitability, a little bit of gain from whatever we have worked hard on, we just start feeling too insecure to be able to take the risk of doing anything else. We are too comforted in our security zone that we just are not able to take any more leaps of faith or risks to be able to do anything else, and for the fear of losing that we have already been able to achieve. And in my life, these are the two things that I have challenged. I've never allowed myself to stop exploring, even as I was coming up to the stage, or even when I was driving down from the office to this venue, I was constantly thinking of something which is very different for what my profession is and what I am known for. And secondly, as I mentioned, that I've taken huge risks in my life, and I want to give you some instances so as to tell you what my real life, real time story is. But I must also start by saying that, like all of you as students, was also a student which did not in any manner stand apart as someone who will go on to become one of the most successful lawyers in the country or perhaps in the world. I believe that I'm a student like most of you. I actually, on the contrary, was very complexed because I'd come from a village. I had had no convent education. I was very small in height, always made to stand ahead in the queue in the assembly. I was very average in my academics. I was very poor in my mathematics. And in class 10th, my mathematics teacher took a complete disliking to me because he thought that I was completely a failure as a student. And he was able to persuade the school principal to not allow me to sit in the board examination. I had to I had to actually change schools because I was very ashamed of sitting with my juniors in the same class for the second time, do my matriculation. When I joined the new school, the principal on the very first day, one Mrs. Witch, she's no more, she called me in her chamber, the office, and handed over the newspaper, the Tribune, the local newspaper. I've grown up in Chandigarh, and asked me to read the headlines of the newspaper to the assembly the same morning without giving me any notice. Just 10 minutes before the assembly, he said, "Here is a pen, note down the headlines and read it." For me, it was unimaginable to be able to stand in before the assembly and to read out the headlines, and that too in English. My vocabulary was poor, my pronunciation was completely way off what English demands. But she left me no choice. I had stood there in the assembly, my legs shaking, my voice trembling, reading the headlines. And by the time I finished, my legs were stable, my voice was no longer trembling. That one small episode changed the course of my life. And in that year in school, I did every possible thing to explore myself. I was doing theater, I was doing sports, I was playing cricket, I was in this cricket team, I was the school captain. And also, by the way, I scored 65 in mathematics. And that was the first time I realized that sometimes you have not explored yourself enough because the system has not allowed you to explore, the surroundings have not allowed you to explore. And then I, of course, joined college. I was a student leader. I always wanted to join politics. That was peak terrorism time in Punjab. And my family was very skeptical. My parents were very, very apprehensive because violence was at the peak. But that was what my aspiration was. And I was a member of a student union. And then one small thing changed the course of my life again. My father, who was a government servant, his services were terminated. He was holding a very important position by a very powerful chief minister who wanted to appoint his own confidant on that position. And I happened to go to a lawyer with my father. In a matter of 3 days, that lawyer argued my father's case and got a stay of the termination. The High Court directed the registrar to accompany my father to ensure that he's not stopped from rejoining. And that day I realized and I saw the power of a lawyer. It was more than anybody else, a politician, a government servant, which my father was holding very senior position, felt very helpless. But the way that senior lawyer argued the case and won that order for my father changed the course of my life, and I was determined that I want to be a lawyer. And not only I want to be a lawyer, I want to be the lawyer training under the same lawyer who had got that relief from my father, which is what I did. And I worked with that lawyer for about 1.5 to 2 years before he became a judge and I went independent. But whatever I am today in terms of what I've learned as a law, as a demeanor, as my body language in the law, in my vocabulary, my advocacy, my ethics, everything I owe to that gentleman for 1.5 to 2 years. But then life is like that. After he became a judge, became very successful. I was in fact appearing as a contemporary to the present Chief Justice of India, or Honorable Justice Shri Suryakant Ji. He was my contemporary in Punjab Haryana High Court. But I felt that Chandigarh is not enough for me. The kind of fire I had in the belly, I wanted to be out there where the world is endless. But Chandigarh, I think is simple. Chandigarh is a small place. You grow like a plant in a small pot. You have limitations. You will ultimately end up becoming a bonsai. And I wanted to be in a place like Delhi where the opportunities are endless. And one fine day, I just packed my bag and I was in Delhi. And I was persuaded by even the acting Chief Justice of Punjab Haryana High Court that why would you want to do that? You have already spent 4.5 years in Chandigarh. You are earning so well. You're doing so well. We already think that you are a judge material. You should not be uprooting yourself and attempt to start all over again in a huge place like Delhi where you know nobody. But I was not afraid of taking risks because I had confidence. I had the potential. And I knew that if I don't do this now, I will never be able to do that again. Because another 3 years in Chandigarh, I would be so embedded in the security of that city, in the security of my profession, that I would not really want to leave. This is the time, take the risk, go. And I took the leap of faith. I started with a small basement in Lajpat Nagar Central Market, which used to get flooded every monsoon. We had to use the buckets to take the water out. But we got one break. One break, ICSCI gave us one case, and there was no looking back. And in a matter of 8 to 10 years, one was to go on to become one of the leading lawyers, the most sought after in insolvency. Yet, I did not allow myself to fall in that trap of success. And then it so happened that the World Bank liked the way I looked at the insolvency law, and they asked me to join them as a consultant. But that was not a full-time position, but as a consultant. And for 8 to 10 years thereafter, I was consulting for the World Bank, IMF, OECD, leaving my practice, living out of aircraft, living out of hotels, working with the countries, helping them draft their policies, frame their regulations, legislations, helping them build institutions. Not at all insecure that what will happen once I go back after 8 years. I'll have no clients, no practice, nothing. Never ever bothered. 8 to 9 to 10 years, I was all over the world, working in more than 70 countries. And then one fine day, having got tired of working globally, I decided it was time to go back. But then I didn't want to go back to the law office. And this was when I was 41. 41. At 41, you're at the peak of your career, the most sought after insolvency lawyer in the world. I decided, no, I don't want to go back to my office again and do the same thing. I took a sabbatical, went to the Himalayas for 5 years. I had built a small summer house in the Himalayas when I was just 27, 28 as a dream house, my first ever property that I earned out of my living, and converted that summer house into a boutique hotel. For 5 years, I lived in the Himalayas, no architect, no designer, work with the laborers, the pony boys, everybody to almost handcraft this property, 21-room property, which is called as Te Aroha Dhanachali. You can Google it at any point of time. And in 2 years, it was rated as the best boutique hotel of India for almost 3 to 4 consecutive years. I would have continued, and that was the time when I started exploring culture, art, literature, because I wanted to build that property as a kind of a museum, as a hub for art, culture, literature. Again, in the constraints of time, I won't be able to talk too much about that. But in 2016, the IBC got enacted. And Mr. Arun Jaitley, who was then the finance minister, called me. He said, now you can't say no. You have to come back because now we have a new insolvency law coming and we need you back here. And that was the time when I came back. And from 2016 onwards, for about 10 years now, I have completely dedicated my life to building a robust insolvency system in the country. Only with one mission, that India should have one of the best insolvency systems in the world. Obviously, I benefit in the process as a lawyer because I continue to sort of appear in courts and earn my living. But both my wife and I decided that in these 10 years of whatever we earn, 50% of that should really go in promoting art, culture, literature, theater, music. And that is what we do. We run 2 foundations now, one for insolvency and one for that. I just want to therefore conclude by saying that even though it was a rapid fire kind of a session, about 12 minutes, but the central message of this was that never ever be afraid or feel limited of exploring yourself. Continue to explore yourself. Each one of you are capable of doing anything and everything that I am capable of doing, or other speakers that you would have heard today or you will hear later who have accomplished a lot. We have in us. The only thing is that we just don't have the courage or sometimes enough motivation to explore ourselves deeply enough to be able to sort of probe what and where those strengths are. And secondly, that never ever be afraid of taking risks or fall in the trap of success. The biggest trap of success is that it does not allow you to look beyond your goal and target. It sort of compels you to sort of be very fixated on what your daily routine is. If you're making 20 lakh rupees as a lawyer every day, why would you want to do anything else? And at some point in time, you start feeling that I am actually not capable of doing anything else because that's what I've done all my life. It's very different from what we used to have many years ago before the generation like yours came in, which was born in the 90s, where we used to have this midlife crisis of the 40s because, we all followed not our dreams, but the aspirations of our parents. And therefore, our dreams stayed buried somewhere deep within. And then we had this midlife crisis where we wanted to do what we really wanted to do, even though we had achieved success. But in your case, please live your dream every single day. Don't wait to retire. But that doesn't really mean that you don't work hard enough. Don't earn a good success. Don't earn a good life, because whatever you may do in life, the bottom line of that is that you have to feel accomplished. You have to feel very fulfilled. You have to feel happy. Success without these three things is meaningless. Whatever you may earn in terms of quantum of wealth, it has absolutely no significance if you don't at the end of the day feel accomplished, fulfilled, and really happy. When you go back at the end of the day to your bed, you feel that you have really accomplished something. The only one mantra that I will also give you alongside as a success in my last 30 seconds is, when you're climbing up the ladder of success, when you're racing to a success, don't ever let the person in you, the human in you, be left behind. Make sure that the human in you, the person in you, walks alongside. Because at some point in time, if you haven't done that, and you pause, you will realize, well, the professional in you, the business person in you has walked way ahead, but the real person in you, you have left too far behind to be able to sort of cross the bridge or make the bridge. So always do that. Never let the real person in you, whether you come from a village, small town, your value system, your emotions, whatever your real human soul is, never ever let it be distance too far from the professional you are in, because that will ultimately create a shallow success, and if I may take the liberty of saying, will not allow you to earn respect at the level that you need to or you deserve with your success. People will be all around you, they will circulate you around you, but they will perhaps not be as respectful towards you behind you as they would be in your presence. Thank you so much.